Hello and welcome. You are watching the Mojo Story, and this is our independent digital platform which does a deep dive into the big issues of the day. On the program today, the big story, of course, is what is happening at the protest sites where the farmers have been on a sit in now for more than 2 months. And I want to bring up the pictures on your screen once again for all of you to see. These are sites that are turning into virtual war zones. There are iron rods and nails and spikes being erected on the roads that lead to and out of these sites, obviously to restrict movement. There are cement walls that are being erected. There are reports coming in of at least 2 trains having been diverted. And on the highways in both Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, there are clear instructions to block the movement of farmers who may be moving towards these protest sites. The question that this presents before all of us is whether a crackdown by the police is now imminent. Most people believe that the use of force is simply not possible. In fact, we've had senior police officers on this program make that point to us as well. But if that is the case, then why are we seeing these kind of fortress-like images at 3 different borders of the national capital? All of this has happened even as the police is now in sections of the capital undergoing drills and rehearsals with a new kind of weaponry. After an incident where a police official was stabbed, this is what at least one part of Delhi's police force is now practicing, a new kind of weaponry which has not been used before. Should we be alarmed? What are we looking at? The Prime Minister has told the all-party meeting that the compromise formula from the government is still on the table. If the compromise formula is still on the table, what do we make of these images? These images are disturbing. As someone who has spent a lot of time at these protest sites, I have been saying, and I want to be wrong about this, that I fear chances of violence at these sites. A greater, more horrible version of what we saw take place on Republic Day. Can that still be contained? Or is the government and the police doubling down? Let us introduce our guests on the program now. Let me introduce all of them one by one. We have Nikhil who's with us. Nikhil is someone who, of course, who's been working with the MKSS, with both laborers and farmers for a very, very long time of his life. We're joined by Harish Damodaran. Harish Damodaran is somebody who knows the agriculture sector, I think, better than most people, better than anyone. Has a very, very good column out in the Indian Express that I would urge everybody to read. We have Saba, a senior journalist and columnist and commentator with us. We have Amod, Kanth, former police commissioner of Delhi, who first sounded the warning against the use of force at these protests on this very program. And we have Shubhrastha, who's a commentator and a host of her own program as well, online program, joining us as well. And I can see Prasanna Karthik joining our stream as well. Prasanna is a policy consultant. Welcome to all of you. I'd like to start, if I may, with you, Amod Kanth, because in many ways, the pictures we're seeing on our screen seem to point that the police is thinking something. And I want you to tell us what at this point the police might be thinking. When we look at these pictures, and I will bring them up in a moment from now again, there you can see this kind of barricading. It's a concretized barricading that's taking place. Even journalists are having to go from another route to go and cover these protests. And like we said, there are walls, literally walls of cement, spikes of iron, rods of iron, nails on the ground, bulldozers at the site. What would the police be thinking as it's doing all of this, sir?
No, I think it looks quite horrifying, the entire situation there. In the sense that it appears that the police is back to the wall. I mean, they're trying to tackle this situation with no solutions being in their hands. And most of the time in such situations, the police becomes helpless. Because, on the one hand, it appears to be an intractable kind of situation where the government has taken a stand in which the law cannot be annulled straightway, according to them. They're prepared to argue and discuss. On the other side, Supreme Court also gave it out, and that stands probably that the people had a right to come there and to sit on dharna and to agitate in the manner they were agitating. In a way, a kind of sanction was given by the Supreme Court. On the third side, can the highways and the arterial roads where the movement of people is also their right, be stopped. Isn't police responsible to maintain that kind of free passages for them and allow them to move? I mean, anybody moving on the road can always ask a question, and the questions are being asked. The other political factors being in the picture, for example, the local people or whoever, they may be politically inclined or politically motivated kind of people who are opposing this kind of agitation, not agitation, this kind of blockage of roads on three most important entry points of Delhi. So this is the situation, and the police is supposed to act. Decidedly, police supposed to act. Now,
What do
how
you
does
mean?
the
What
police
do you
act?
mean by what do you mean by the police is supposed to act? What is the
I'll try.
reason?
I'll
What
try
is
to
the
clarify.
reason? May I just ask a question? What is the reason? I know what happened on Republic Day was shameful. We've all acknowledged it. I know that a law and order situation cannot be allowed to develop. But if there is a peaceful protest and a peaceful gathering of farmers, Mr. Kanth, what would be the basis to barricade it such that other farmers are not able to reach that site, that media is not able to reach that site? What is the reason to treat our farmers as if they were the enemies of the state? Because this kind of deployment, and I just want to bring up those pictures just for a moment again, this is unprecedented, right? And this has not happened for more than 2 months. And when we see nails, spikes, iron rods, what is this? Why do we
Barkha,
need this?
Barkha, that is why I started with a statement. It is horrifying. I
Yeah,
stand by that statement that this kind of preparation, yesterday
yeah,
when those peculiar kind of rods showed like rods were shown to me, somebody showed it
yeah,
to me. I
yes,
confirmed. I tried to confirm from Delhi police. They said yes, it has been prepared and it has been distributed. That kind of thing. That
yeah,
appeared to be not so unreasonable on hindsight. When I heard about it, I said, all
yeah,
right, if they are being attacked by shots, I think they have
yeah,
to protect. So that's the new kind of innovative protective mechanism that they have created. Fine. Now
yeah,
here the problem is that yeah, there is certain kind of stalemate. The point I am
yeah,
trying to make, that certain kind of stalemate, and that is why Barkha, precisely, and for all of you, all listening to this program, I mean co-participant also, I am saying that the stand of government, the stand of farmers, the unions, the stand of Supreme Court of India creates a frozen situation. It's a frozen situation. And in that frozen situation, the police has to play. I mean, if I am being devil's advocate in the sense that there's certain role the police has to play under the law. I mean, under the law, the police has to keep the road clear. The police is supposed to facilitate the passage of people, passage of vehicles on these arterial roads. That's the one particular thing. Had it been somewhere, let's say, not on the road, not blocking the passage, not blocking the traffic, in that case, probably things would have been different. But traffic, the movement of traffic, the movement
but
of
that
people.
traffic movement didn't seem to bother anyone for two and a
No,
half months.
whatever. See, I'm not a
So
political. First of all, that I'm not making
I'm
any
saying, I'm
political.
saying, Mr. Khan, just like the decision, as you yourself said on this platform, just like the decision to allow the rally, tractor rally into Delhi on Republic Day would have been a political one. The decision, perhaps, to barricade these sites like this, would it also be political, or would it be a policing decision?
See, that was, if let us say that the permitting rallies. I told you frankly that I had a word with the Commissioner of Police Delhi, being one of my colleagues earlier, junior colleagues earlier. He frankly
Yeah.
told me that then the numbers had not been given, but in your program, Barkha, he told me 35,000 tractors. Permission of 5,000, 35,000 coming, 2 lakh people descending on Delhi, according to Commissioner of Police, and rightly so, partly at least, that all the 37 conditions were violated. So decidedly, it was a political decision. See, these kind of situations,
Sure.
all my life I have seen that the decisions are political, but who has to take it all? Ultimately, the police has a role to play. I mean, police cannot allow things to happen in a situation where the law enforcement becomes the police job. We can
Okay.
discuss that point further.
Sure, sure. But it just fills me with a sense of dread. And that's why, in a moment after I've spoken to Shubhrastha, Saba, and Nikhil, I do want to speak to Harish, because Harish does believe that there still could be a framework for a resolution. And I think that's really what we need to talk about, because we cannot afford this as a country, what's happening at the borders of our capital. And Shubhrastha, when you were last on the program, you did speak about the fact that dialogue should remain open. The Prime Minister himself, no less, told the all-party meeting ahead of the session of Parliament that the government's compromise formula, which was to hold the laws in abeyance for 18 months, is very much on the table. If so, why is the government not reaching out at this point? Rakesh Tikait told me in an interview at the Ghazipur border that he would like to talk. He would like to talk. Yogendra Yadav told me the same. Why are we not seeing the government pick up this outreach from the farmers and begin another round of dialogue? Why are we seeing these protest sites being treated as if they are war zones?
Barkha, correct me if I'm wrong, but on 26th January itself, I think the Prime Minister's office opened the hotline for any farmer leader or any farmer to just pick up the phone and call the Prime Minister's office. In fact, I would like to ask Mr. Tikait, why has he not made that call? And why was that call not recorded by Mr. Tikait himself and put out on the public domain? Barkha, as much as we would like to deny, this is no longer a policy matter. We discussed it last time on your program as well, and we agreed that this is pretty much a political protest. So now when politics is being played all around it, I think we as citizens and as conscientious individuals should brace up for much more politics on this, because frankly speaking, neither the protesters nor anybody who is speaking for protesters is interested in even having a discussion on the farm bills anymore. So if it is about an electoral battle, then let's see what goes in Northeast is going for Assam elections are underway. UP is going for polls. Now let's see whether Tikait or the BJP has a chance to stand. This is, for me, very clear.
I agree with you that the conversation has gone beyond policy. I think that's a tragedy. I think the conversation should have been focused on the policy, on the laws. We've lost sight of that conversation. But I take your point that with a slew of opposition leaders, I think Sanjay Raut arrived at the Ghazipur border today. When I was there, Manish Sisodia was there. There have been others. Yogendra Yadav has been there, though he says he's at the helm of this movement in his capacity as a member of the Samyukt Kisan Morcha. In fact, can we play those pictures of Sanjay Raut with Rakesh Tikait at the Ghazipur border? But Shubhrastha, I will still ask you, even speaking politically, how does it suit the government politically to have this developing situation? It's an inflammable situation. It is a potentially violent situation. It is in the end farmers of 3 to 4 states at least congregated, Punjab, Haryana, parts of Western UP, Rajasthan. So how does this politically suit the government? Why does this politically suit the government?
I don't know if it politically suits the government or not, but as somebody who has worked on political strategies and war rooms for more than 6 years now, let me tell you this, Barkha, that the kind of image that this movement and the people who headed this movement have created in the collective memory and collective consciousness of this nation, it's going to pay them really heavily, not just in terms of electoral battles, but also in terms of the political imagination of these protesters. Number one. Number two, I agree with you. And I said it last time, I want to reiterate it, reify this point, that this entire movement is a very North India-centric movement. The entire nation is not behind these protests. There are farmers who absolutely, they might not support the farm bills by coming out on the roads, but they are pretty much on board with parliamentary procedures being followed, with democracy not being in danger. So as I said, and I'll keep reasserting, now that it has gone political, let politics take its course. And let me also tell you, because I've been on ground in Bihar and I'm in UP right now, speaking to almost 50 to 60 people who are associated with some political connection or the other. This government has not lost any face. It's the protesters, by virtue of the methods of their protest, by virtue of the images, as I said, that they presented on Republic Day, they have lost public trust. Totally.
I just want a very brief response, because when we're talking about the images, clearly that image of the protesters hoisting the Nishan Sahib at the Red Fort complex was a terrible image. But how are these images, these images that we're seeing of nails on the road and cement walls, how are these images good for a democracy? So if that was a terrible image, this is a terrible image too. This is not a democracy that is confident in itself.
I have a different take than you, Barkha. Of course, it's not a pretty image to have these barricades being, splashed all across newspaper headlines and, and on digital media. But Delhi also remembers what happened to the culmination of anti-CAA protests. I think as citizens, we have absolutely braced up to the fact that any protests which translates from being about policy to being about politics has unfortunately taken very violent turns. So I know it is not a pretty picture, but I think that's how it's supposed to be. And I agree with Mr. Kanth when he says that the police needs to step in, needs to act. And in fact, as a citizen, as a resident of Delhi, I think the Delhi police needs to be a little more in the face and tell the protesters point blank that if they do not follow law and order, then there are mechanisms that the state
Okay.
should. Uh, yeah.
Okay, it's actually not that easy. I know because I was at Ghazipur that the police initially did come to clear out the protesters, and then we had the image of Rakesh Tikait crying, calling for farmers to come to the site, and it changed the game. And even today, one of his videos, just before I come to Nikhil, I just want to bring up this image in the middle of this barricaded little spot. There's Mr. Tikayat. So this has become, as you said, Shubhrastha, a contestation of images. And there is also this image. There is also this image of Rakesh Tikayat sitting there having his khana in the middle of that little barricaded, cemented, cordoned off spot now going viral. And I just want to bring in Nikhil. Just like we asked the government, what are you thinking? I think we must ask the farmers also, what are you thinking? Where is this going? If both sides are going to be maximalist, how do we get out of what Amod Kanth has called a logjam? And it's a logjam with some very, very grave repercussions, as we saw both on Republic Day and people who know Punjab in particular and its worst years have pointed out. Nikhil.
Yeah. So I think to have the lasting image as that Republic Day image of some troublemakers, let's understand that for 3 months, these extraordinary protests have by and large shown an extraordinarily humane and peaceful face. Farmers and the agriculture sector have had a lot of demands, and these sets of laws went in the face of them. They were absolutely in the opposite direction. This was a set of farmers who have kept our granaries full. Yes, there may be need for reform within those sectors, but this is not the reform they were looking for. They gave adequate warning. A set of ordinances was thrust down upon them. They started protesting in Punjab and Haryana. They moved and they were stopped all the way from coming to Delhi. When they came even in smaller numbers, when they came to talk, when they came to negotiate, they were not being talked to. Now, in a democracy, this has built over time, Barkha, and it's something that we need to understand. And it built in a way that they were not aggressive with people, and a few people, even on Republic Day. It is absolutely ridiculous for us to paint the entire lot of 2 lakh farmers in terms of the few who did something which was ridiculous, and it was meant to be ridiculous. They aimed to create trouble. And actually, that's a pattern. And that's something I want to say even to Shubhrastha and the rest, that even in the CAA, we are passing laws that people are extremely unhappy with. Their survival is threatened. Whether we agree or not, in a democracy, we need to talk to them. We need to understand why it is that they want to spend. Those Muslim women spend time on the roads. We are talking about protest, or these farmers, why it's no picnic to come there and spend 2 months away.
I agree with you, but I just want to ask you, neither side can afford to be maximalist, right? So the government is going to turn around and say that we did put a compromise formula on the table. The Prime Minister has said that formula is still on the table. The farmers, I have met the farm leaders, I've met say, hum baatcheet ke liye tayar hain. How do we get out of this logjam? We cannot afford a clash between an armed police and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of farmers. This country simply cannot afford that moment.
Absolutely. You cannot be at war with your own people. There are people, they are grain producers. They are not this idea that those 2 lakh people who are out there, or all of them who have left their home, are some people who are being manipulated or are being manipulated by sets of people, is just simply not correct. It's something we need to understand. And in talking, my question, Barkha, is if the government can say that for 1.5 years, we will suspend the laws, then why can't the government just do what, also from its side, say that, okay, a suspension is equivalent to repeal, and let's talk in 1.5 years.
Okay.
Let's spend that 1.5 years talking about what kind of reform we actually need and bring about that. Let's understand that a huge segment, and whether it's north or south, I just want to say 2 quick things. I want to say that this painting of entire protests in terms of UAPA and sedition for journalists, for the people who are on protest, for the leaders who signed and who tried to keep everyone in check. Actually, you lose your discussion with the leadership and you've made it even worse for yourself. These are lessons of a democracy. We cannot afford to do that. We did that with the CA. We are doing that here. We are painting some of our best people in the worst terms for no reason at all. This is just simply not something we can do with the kinds of journalists that we are doing it, and cutting off internet, putting barbed wire. What is this? What kind of democracy is this? So other ways can be found by actually saying, okay, we know those who created trouble, we'll go after them. We know those who want to find a solution, we'll talk to them, and that actually start talking. The budget we had yesterday, how much did it do for those farmers? What kind of great things did they find?
Very brief interjection from Shubhrastha, then Saba, then I do want to spend some time with Harish, understanding what can be done. Shubhrastha, very briefly, please. Yeah.
Yes. Barkha, I wouldn't want to go into the whole journalist question right now because, it's a very complicated issue. We just saw what happened with Arnab. People didn't stand up. There are many issues that, can be discussed under that radar. Specifically coming to the issue of farmers' protests, let's remember that there are MPs, there are MLAs, there are state governments in place who also could have lent an ear. Why is it that every time the protests happen in this country, it is about a national takeover of the national capital, trying to appeal to the Prime Minister alone? I mean, how many have you been rather written to any one MP specifying that these are the specific points he does not agree with, and therefore he would want his own MP to represent himself in Parliament as a voice of all these farmers and put out these, recommendations.
Two points there. On the media, certainly there have been many stories that journalists have got wrong in this fog of claims and counterclaims. But is sedition the answer to that? No, I think we can all agree that the sedition law needs to be junked and buried. We can talk about the quality of reporting, the absence of robust reportage, the fact that our senior people should have been checking facts before putting out something in an inflammable situation. I agree. But sedition? Ridiculous, right? So I think we have to be very clear about what we are saying, what the crime is, or rather the fault is, and what the response of the state is. So I think we have to separate these two things. On Ornav, we'll have a separate program. It's apples and oranges. We're mixing up issues. I want to stay on the farmers. Saba, what Shubhrastha is right about is that this is now political. This is political, and we've seen.
I actually disagree. Barkha, I've also
no. I'm saying Ghazipur में आप जाएंगे तो आप जयंत चौधरी, अखिलेश यादव.
Yeah. I've been there. Yeah. I've been to all the sites, so I've been to all of them. Yeah. So here's the thing: it's become political now. It began on an economic issue. The thing, and you've been there, Barkha, which is what I respect about you. You're that one anchor journalist who's on the ground, right? So the thing is, even if there is talk of a compromise, even if we have these discussions, anyone who's gone there, spoken to them, and then spoken to the leadership separately through telephone or whatever, and knows that they're not going to listen. The conversation, it is fascinating to me as an observer of protest. First, we had Delhi is the site of the Anna movement also, right? Which completely destabilized the UPA. Government, and then Delhi is the site of the anti-CA. Anti-CA is a small little tents here and there. Anna movement was larger. I've never seen anything so large ever. It just goes on, and you know that. Have you ever seen anything so large? You're also dealing with people when they will tell you. So these barbed wires going up, in my imagination, it looks like the border, the real border of India. Like a border. In my imagination. So you are now trying to hem in people who have a link with soldiery. We know the data about this peasantry is soldiery. They will tell you that, right? Number two, what has happened after Republic Day? The attempt to crack it down. What was all peasant movements come from one place, but that does not mean. What is very interesting sociologically is that the really starving, hungry farmers, Adivasis and all in other parts of India, why are they not protesting? In some cases, you will find people from Maharashtra there. You will find all of them there. It is always the Punjab farmer began with being so prosperous and agriculture has seen a decline. We know all of this, okay?
Yeah.
So they're seeing this. What is fascinating about these protests, and I'll say this, is the chatter, anti-capitalist chatter by the average citizen on the ground. Whether these are theories, whether they are conspiracies, but because, I just go and I converse with people over there. They are talking stuff about each of these laws is being broken down over there. First, they're not going to agree to a middle path. So I've never seen this kind of economic dialogue on the ground. There is nothing, they're not talking about emotional identity issues. They're talking about, they're breaking down budgets and talking about why this is, they're talking about electoral bonds.
But there is identity mixed in. But
I
slightly disagree with you that there are identity fault lines playing out as well.
But Barkha, now finally I'd like to say, after what happened on Republic Day, whatever happened with one group, we've seen in all protests, there is always, be it of the right wing, be it of this side, there is one group which will go and act thing. That happened. But after that, the protest, the epicenter is shifting to Western Uttar Pradesh.
Yeah.
So that's the shift. That's becoming political. That is political. That is political 100%. Because they are original backers. I think you can say there isn't, look, this is India. There's a little bit of identity. There's everything, but the protest that came out was economic. It came out against the laws that people saw as a threat, which is why they're sitting there not getting toilets and all right now, which is what the government is giving those who have served them.
And actually, if we're talking politics, as the protest shifts to the to Western UP as the epicenter, that's when it's so political that the government is also somewhat on the back foot, because remember, these are not
their own bastion. It's from where the great Muzaffarnagar. Muzaffarnagar is where the great
voted Modi, as he told me. Okay, so Harish, Damodaran, before we return to the politics and the policing and what may happen next, I think you possibly still see that there can be some sort of retreat from the precipice. First, let's talk a little bit about this police action as you see it building up. And how you think we might be able to pull back from the brink. So just unmute yourself, please. You're muted at your end.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
See, I'm not an expert on policing or internal security. But one thing I can tell you, I totally agree with Saba. These farmers are very aware farmers. They know everything. Okay, if you speak to them, they'll tell you how much electricity tariffs have gone up in the last 3 years. They'll tell you how much the cost of pesticides has gone up. They'll tell you how much diesel prices have gone up. We have to accept the fact that these are very aware farmers. These are not some rural idiots. Okay, these are people who know their maths. Okay, you have to treat them like businessmen. So when you are doing a reform, right? Like let us take, say, 1991 reform. Look, there was a lot of informed discussion, whether with CII, whether it is FICCI, with all these people. Did you put them behind bars and did you do all these kind of stuff, whatever, which we are seeing, all these surreal things? These are very aware farmers. These are not normal, these are not dumb, rural, whatever, Gamar kind of people. Okay, they are very sophisticated. Okay, they know what they are talking. Okay, see, like I'm looking at, for example, the labor code bills. They were referred to the Standing Committee on Parliament. Right now, we have the Personal Data Protection Bill, right? And that is before the Joint Parliamentary Committee. Are you saying that these farm bills are nothing? You can just push them like this without any debate, without any discussion. I think there is no option for the government. They have to repeal. Okay, you repeal, redraft, and reenact. It has to be done on a clean slate. Unless, as Shubhrastha is suggesting, that the government is going to brazen it out politically. I don't know. I hope that's not the case. I love my country. I hope that's not going to be the thing.
Yeah. But can I ask you, Shubhrastha, 1 second. Can I ask you though, Harish, you say there's no option but to repeal these laws. If the government doesn't do that, really, because the only law it has blinked on before this is the Land Acquisition Ordinance, and it would probably define its attitude as having blinked by offering this abeyance. Is there a danger that the farmers' movement could get undone by its own maximalist position? I agree that the government totally misunderstood and underestimated the capacity of the farmer to stay on the ground. I agree that the government thought after 26 January the movement was going away. Tikait was able to, in that moment, re-energize it, and now it's back to having acquired a life of its own. But Harish, there are also other things happening now that haven't happened before. For example, I want to pick up this Reuters photograph. In a moment from now, I want to pick up this Reuters photograph where we actually saw a police officer, an SHO, and a man holding what seems to be a sword at him. Right? This is what you can see. And Yogendra Yadav told me that he called the police officer who was stabbed. He apologized to him, even though the man holding this sword is not from the Samyukt Kisan Morcha, and it's from a group that Yogendra Yadav actually believes is being given a long rope by the police. So, there is an injured policeman. We have his shots as well. He was stabbed. And then there is this new kind of deployment as Mr. Amod Kanth was taking place. There's the injured policeman. This man was stabbed. We also have to remember, Harish, that there were close to 400 policemen who were injured. And it has resulted in this new deployment, and we have that picture too, and we'll play it for you in just a moment. It's resulted in this new deployment where now you have policemen also holding some variation of swords. I'm asking you all this not because the police doesn't have to answer for its own excesses in the incidents where those have taken place or its own partisanship where that has taken place, but because is there a danger that public support could be eroded because of these images? And is that what the government is in fact counting out? There is a new weaponry now the police is going to deploy. So Harish, is it as simple as it was, let's say, a month ago or even 2 weeks ago?
I think in rural areas, I think among farmers, the support for this movement is only growing, and I can tell you one of the legacies of this movement is that every farmer in India today knows what is MSP. Okay, this was not the case, say, about a year ago, 6 months ago. Now, every farmer today will say a farmer in Odisha will say that, I'm getting only 1100 rupees per quintal for paddy. The MSP is 1900. 800 rupees I'm getting cheated. And my yield is 20 quintals. So then he does the calculation. See, let us first understand that the farmer is a very aware, a very rational person today. He is a businessman, okay? She is a businessman. You have to treat them like businessmen. You should give them the same respect that you give to a Sunil Mittal or to a Ratan Tata or somebody. So you negotiate with them. And the way to do it is not to come out with these kind of laws without any discussion and all. And don't say that, I discussed it with Ashok Gulati, I discussed it with this thing.
No, they'll say they passed it in Parliament. They won't say the discussion. They'll say the Parliament.
But why don't you pass the personal data protection bill like this? What is the need for JPC? Why have Parliament Select Committee? Don't have anything. And you're saying that this is the most important reform since 1991, right? I mean, what is there? And let us look at it even from the standpoint of a reformer. Now, how are you going to now deregulate urea? How are you going to cap MSP procurement? What are you going to do? I mean, more substantial reforms. How are you going to do it? You have, so much of political capital has been expended on these absolutely, unnecessary reforms, if you ask me. It's not such a big deal.
So you're saying there's no way out of this mess without a repeal?
See, you have to, the person who's being reformed has to be part of the game, right? I mean, there's no point. I mean, this is not, when you have reforms, it has to be based on dialogue, right? I mean, there's no point in saying,
Okay, sorry. Now, Shubhrastha, I know, but Mr. Kanth had his hand up before that, so I'll go to him. Sir, you made a point.
One small point. See, one small point. See, the discussion going on here is primarily about, let's say, these laws, whether they are right or wrong. I mean, they may be wrong, let's for argument's sake, they may be wrong completely and they must be repealed. If that be the unanimous opinion also, although it's not unanimous here in this group. One point I have to ask very clearly that with such an august kind of gathering here, small gathering, where people can think, they're very thoughtful people. Everybody has appreciated that Delhi police exercised extraordinary restraint on 26th. And then a lot of questions were asked from me also in various other fora, where they said that why is it that the police did not use force where they could have opened fire also? There were several occasions in that entire chain of events where even firing would have been acceptable. Let's say the incident which took place in Red Fort, for example, that was a feeling, a very strong feeling. Now, having gone through that process where police acted in utmost restraint, now is a situation coming up again where the police role is totally undefined. I think you guys have to tell. You have to tell that what is your remedy for the police. What do you say about the police?
I actually take your point that I think the police is being made to carry the cross both on 26th January and subsequently for decisions that have to be political. This is not a policing solution. The solution to this standoff is not a policing solution. But before I get your response, Amod, Kanth, and open this up, I just want to say that the fog of claims and counterclaims has been over the charge of a farmer having been killed by a gunshot. This is where some journalists got the story wrong. I did ask Yogendra Yadav, who's at the helm of these protests. He, by the way, called what happened at Red Fort India's Capitol Hill scandal. But he believed that people like Deep Sidhu, the extremists, had been given a long rope deliberately, Mr. Kanth, by the police. This is his theory. He believes that that's what happened, that there was a deliberate attempt to discredit the movement. And I do want to ask you about that. But first, this is what Yogendra Yadav has said about the entire controversy around whether gunshot firing took place or not.
And for 6 hours, I was in this dread that firing should not take place. And I must say, from whatever I know so far, that it did not take place, that what appeared to be firing was actually tear gas shells.
Okay, so he's very clearly said that in his estimation, there was no firing. And I just thought that that was important to come from someone who's involved with the movement, not from journalists versus police on this. Someone at the helm of the movement is actually saying this. Now, Mr. Kanth, there are many versions of why Deep Sidhu was allowed into the Red Fort. Yogendra Yadav said in the same interview to me that he told the Delhi police on the 25th night that this man is an extremist, stop him from coming to Delhi. The police didn't stop him. He also says that he apologized to the police officer who was stabbed, but he believes the police did not show sort of independence, showed partisanship to the Singhu border when clashes were taking place. How is the police to remain independent in this situation, independent of the orders it's getting from government?
See, these kind of stories, for example, that what should have been done to Deep, for example. I mean, a man with a shady past, a man who could be having criminal record. There are several people who might be falling in that career. But it's really unrealistic. It's an impossible situation. Impossible in the sense that was it possible for the police to identify such people in that kind of crowd? You know it very well, and we have discussed this issue earlier also, that on the borders, despite giving those 37 commitments, whatever the police claims, Delhi police claims to be having with them, I mean, they started crossing the border. They started violating those conditions even the night before, 25th night, for example, 24th night, they started doing it. So that is the kind of situation we are talking about. So to get into these details, it's very difficult when a crowd of 2 lakh people is descending on Delhi with that kind of position, aggression.
But then, sir, may I just interrupt you for a second to play a little bit more of what Yogendra Yadav said? This is what he says happened on the 25th night. I'm only bringing this up because you said, what is the police to do? Now, here is him saying, I reached out to the Delhi police and I told them this is the situation on the eve of Republic Day. Listen to this. Can we bring it flag Deep Sidhu's speech to the police, to the Delhi police? That's very important. You did.
That they had captured our stage, that they were onto something very, very disturbing. This was spoken to, and police officers knew about it around 11 at night on the 25th. I would not get into details. I would not name the officer.
You will not name the officer? You will not name the officer?
This was not a secret thing. I mean, stage.
What did you communicate? What did you communicate to the Delhi police?
On 2 issues, let me put it absolutely clearly. On the Deep Sidhu episode, I was in touch with Delhi police till late night of 25th, till finally we managed to push him out of the stage. And police confirmed to me, ab settle ho gaya, ab usko utar diya aap logon ne. So actually, I got the information about Deep Sidhu being finally ejected from the stage from Delhi police. Police knew about it. We were in conversation with police.
Right. I'm playing because see, I don't know. I don't know, but I have to report all sides of the story, right, Mr.
No,
Kanth?
one very, Barkha and all of you, I think, see, this kind of situation that, let's say, unruly elements or aggressive elements, they take over the stage. In that kind of situation where thousands and thousands of people have assembled and they have a plan, they are coming in an aggressive posture, they have to follow a particular path. And let's say a group of youngsters, a group of people who are more aggressive, who may be lawless, who may be so-called anti-social elements also, they take over the stage. What the police can do? Let me inform you, Barkha, you know me very well. You understand that I am a very strong supporter of community policing. The book that you have released recently was all about it. I want people and the police to be interfaced and work together. I mean, that's the kind of work I have done all my life. But if I place myself in that situation also, I think I'm helpless because nobody can act really.
Are you comfortable? Are you comfortable with this barricading, Mr. Kanth? Are you comfortable with iron rods?
I'm very, very uncomfortable because I can see the consequences of it. But again, I'm not able to understand how the police is supposed to act. And that's why such eminent people sitting here, I'm asking the question time and again, what is your suggestion for the police to act?
I think that's a fair question because it's not a policing decision. Nikhil,
I know, but then police has to see police world over. Police world over. Barkha, one sentence.
Sorry,
police world over. In fact, I have a fair idea of policing in many countries, at least 25 countries, partly where I have gone on account of my work. It has suffered like this. It is not only here. If let's say
I empathize. I'm going on saying again and again, it's not a policing decision. But Nikhil, sorry, go ahead and then Shubhrastha.
So what I'd like to say to Mr. Amod Kanth is, yes, there are situations which are very difficult for the police, but our democratic fabric is certainly being stretched. The point is that something that Mr. Damodaran also said, that a very aware, large community kept, when with its back to the wall, kept raising these issues over and over again, and democratic platforms are being closed off all over the place. And what my bigger problem is, why does the police, why does the National Investigating Agency come in and issue notices to people under UAPA and under these things, and then when there are negotiations, they withdraw it? And why do all those 37 people who are more reasonable, why do you put sedition and UAPA against people like that? That puts the police as a part of a political administration, whereas the police needs to be able to deal with people. In those who break the law, certainly take action against them. But do not call them anti-national. Do not place this entire thing in that kind of framework.
I think that's an important point, and Mr. Kanth can respond to it later, that we cannot frame this conversation in terms of who's a nationalist and who's not. Shubhrastha and then Saba. Shubhrastha, please go ahead.
Barkha, I don't know who called these protests anti-national. Surely none of the panelists sitting here did. So I don't know who this conversation is really directed at. There was this conversation about Gamar versus aware farmers. Let me put it out on record. Even if a farmer from Odisha or Bihar who cannot speak in fancy English as Yogendra Yadav can, has every right to speak to the government, which is why my question still stands. When the Prime Minister opened his hotline, advertised it across all media, that any farmer leader who has a problem, who wants to discuss something with the government, can call the Prime Minister's office. Why did Rakesh Tikait or Yogendra Yadav not call? Because their not calling is an absolute statement of going completely extinct from conversation, and now they cannot come and place the onus that the government is not willing to talk. Well, the government is. It's just that they want discussions on a live media platform where they invite friendly media channels and then have a conversation. Well, that's not going to happen. I think as citizens we wouldn't like that to happen. We saw a live debate in Parliament. We saw the kind of protests that MPs raised on farm bills. Actually, there were not many questions raised.
Let's talk about Parliament. Let's talk about Parliament, and that's an important point. Quickly.
One simple point, Barkha. There was also this talk about farmers being businessmen. This is exactly what this government, with all these three bills, actually emphasized. Take farming out of specific communities, specific geographies. Make it democratic in terms of giving every farmer a fair business opportunity. Today, I'm really proud that makhana from Bihar can be sold to an enterprise in Kerala without any middleman getting involved. And I don't understand why will any genuine farmer who does not have an SUV, by the way, who is as impoverished as a farmer in Orissa or in Malkangiri is, I don't understand why should he be not given a fair playing field than a farmer from Punjab who has matched up.
So I want to go. So thanks. Sorry to interrupt you, but we have just 10 minutes left, so I want to move along. Saba and Harish. Saba, Parliament is on.
Yeah.
It's not yet, right? Parliament is in session, and the Prime Minister can stand up and make a statement saying things have come to a pass. We need to come back from it. Here's my hand.
Absolutely.
I extend my hand. Come talk to me. I think if the farmers do not talk after that, public opinion could turn.
Barkha, this public opinion question that you're raising, the Anna movement was an urban movement. Let's just realize this. We missed this farm agitation. I did. I don't think Harish would have because he covers rural affairs. We missed it till it descended on us in Delhi. It had been brewing for some time. Shaheen Bagh anti-CA began in Delhi. We all covered it, right? Let's face, as somebody who knows the importance of reporting out there. This is having a dynamic which is just spreading in a very, we cannot predict what is happening, but I think the dam has burst. I don't think you have a settled number of leaders unless the government repeals, as Harish is saying, unless the government says we withdraw. And the government should do that right now instead of treating it like a political movement. The government should do that right now because the numbers are just increasing. I'm getting calls from, because I have covered so much of UP, so in every town I have my local stringers. They don't know what is happening in the western parts. They don't understand what is happening. And then, one survives as a journalist by building up your network of local friends, So I'm getting these calls.
But this is also
so
as
it's
political
becoming
journalists.
and at the same time,
As political journalists, we have to apply our understanding of the government.
I think it's up to the government.
What may happen, right?
Yeah,
to apply our understanding of politics. It's a
government has to pull back, I think, because people have become, it's getting inflamed right now, and you don't need the Adityanath Yogi approach to this. Sedition case lagao, lathi bejo, road ko dig up karo. You don't need that. I wish that the Prime Minister and the Home Minister would give it a different thing because the numbers are just increasing. These are not manufactured.
I have a question.
I will not sleep out in the open.
Yeah. Saba, in case something really goes wrong in Western UP, are you not going to ask Yogi Adityanath? Are you not going to pin the responsibility on him? It's very easy to make a political statement that we don't need a Yogi Adityanath type of a situation. Well, he is the Chief Minister of UP. You need to deal with this.
I'm saying you don't need his solutions. I don't like him. That's a different matter. I'm sorry, he makes sedition charges.
Is going to have
by the way,
I know you're a fan of Yogi Adityanath. He has filed sedition charges. Except for journalists who are chamchas, nobody likes that man, yaar. And in the ideal house. Let's be clear. He has filed sedition charges against.
I think the only that happens on the show has come.
Okay, can I jump in? I really, this is not about Yogi Adityanath right now. One minute. Let's stay on the issue.
Adityanath Yogi is not a Democrat. He may have been elected.
I don't want to
neither are you in that case.
Adityanath right now because let's stay on the issue. The solution has to come.
Have you been to the protest site,
Shubhrastha? May I remind both of you?
So much. Go there.
1 minute. Please, let's not go here.
Go to one.
1 minute, please. I'm requesting you. We have 5-7 minutes left. Let's focus.
The
solution has to come from the central government. One of the solutions, Harish, possibly, I don't know, could be to leave it to the states. That's how the Supreme Court got involved on the constitutional validity of the center actually legislating. Amod Kanth actually feels that the Supreme Court, by getting involved, created a chaotic situation for the police, ironically. But this is how it is. It's in the court now. I'm asking again and again, if the government does not repeal these laws, is there another way? Because I could be wrong, but this is just doesn't strike me as the kind of government that would repeal the laws. I could be wrong. Harish, you need to unmute yourself, please. Harish, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Harish, you're on mute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. See, 1.5 years, whatever, the holding the implementation of the law is as good as repealing, right? I mean, so why don't you say that we are repealing? The other thing which you are saying, leaving it to the states, I think that makes sense. See, let the BJP states, let them implement it. Right now, what we are having is in Madhya Pradesh, mandis are shutting down. Especially the small mandis, because the business is just going outside the mandis. There may be transactions happening there, but the billing is all happening outside. Okay, and what is happening is the mandis are losing revenues. So you could have a situation where mandis just shut down. Okay, so let the BJP rule states, let them implement it. If it works well, let them work it. I think ultimately agriculture marketing is something which you should leave it to the states. Mr. Nitish Kumar, he did it with Bihar, and we know what are the results. What is the price of maize which Bihar farmers are getting? Definitely the Bihar farmer is not getting MSP, whereas the Punjab and Haryana farmer is at least getting MSP, right? So you leave it to the states, right? And I think maybe that can be one kind of an option, But according to me, there is no difference between repealing and 1.5 years I'm not going to implement it. So why don't you just say, just bow to the farmer? I mean, who's the farmer? The farmer is not a terrorist, right? You say, okay, boss, I lost, fine, chalo, main isko repeal karta hu. What is going to happen? Heavens are not going to fall, right? I mean, it's not as though these reforms are so important that some $100 billion of investment is going to come. See, why is the government being so egoistic? There's no need, I mean, I think it's okay if farmers are maximalists, but government should not be maximalist. I mean, I think let's be very clear. These are not two whatever. It's like father and whatever and my daughter, right? I mean, see, I can't have same ego as my daughter, right? I mean, at some point I have to, bend down. I mean, I think government
you have to be the softer. The state has to be softer. The state has to be more generous. The state has to be more benign. It is the state's job to create that compact between the citizen and the state. That's a point that's taken. But I do want to take in my last comments an answer to Amod Khan's question. What are we expecting of the police at this point? And Mr. Kanth, I think Nikhil did, and we just lost him there. Nikhil did make the important question I was saying about the sedition laws and whether that makes the police part of a political establishment. But Saba, we'll come back to sedition. I'm sure Amod will join us back. Yeah. But I think that it's a tough job for the police. We have to also acknowledge. Absolutely. This is a very, very complicated place for an ordinary police officer who's on duty at these borders to be in. It's right?
Terrible. So, Barkha, I wanted to share an anecdote with you because on the 31st of December, as last day of the year, I went to Singhu border where there was a scuff. You've been there so many times, which is, so you know how many podiums there are, tents and all that. At one point, I was pushed as the Nihangs were coming in their horses and somebody took off my phone. So then my encounter with the police begins over there, okay? You know what and this is before the paramilitary and all have now come in. The police says, they advise me to go to Narela and they say, hum kya kare? Hum to bas baith ke khade rehte hain. This is local cops. Before this, and then they advise me to go to the farmers, who really made an effort. They made announcement from multiple stages in Punjabi, because it was an expensive phone and I was completely shaken by losing it for that moment. And the cops were all standing there smiling. I was chatting with them. They said, "Itni badi crowd ke samne hum kya kar sakte hain?" Then I went to the Narela Thana. I found my way there to file an FIR. I was talking to them over there. I mean, they were all overwhelmed by this. Right now, this is a political decision that you dig up these roads. This is this is paramilitary police being told to come in and do all of this. The police is not going to act against
they do get it both ways, right? They're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. They're asked questions of how protesters were allowed right up to the Red Fort complex. Why were they not stopped? There are sort of liberal commentators who are fiscally in support of these farm laws, who've been on this program, who said, why were these protesters handled with kid gloves? So I think, Nikhil, while your point is very well taken on the sedition cases, and I mean, I think we don't even have to spend 2 minutes discussing that, but I think it's a law that needs to be buried. The fact of actual on-ground policing, what is the policeman supposed to do?
Yeah, so sedition and UAPA, Barkha.
And UAPA.
So right.
Passed, by the way, not by this government, but by the previous Congress government, just to underline
Absolutely. It's been for years and years. This is nothing. But the point is that the police, yes, absolutely gets it the worst both ways. and the police is in a very difficult situation. The decision for digging up is political. Putting spikes is political. The decision for allowing in on 26 January is political. And it is actually good politics if you know how to deal with people who may be opposing you. And it is very poor democratic politics if you put the police as your face when you are actually dealing with a protest, and whenever you want to strike against them, you put the worst face of a police force. That's very, very harmful for the country as a whole. The police, it must be clear that these orders are coming from the political establishment, and the police must also somewhere, the point is that Mr. Amod Kanth said it is a police's job to keep roads open. I think it is a police's job to keep roads open, but it is also the police's job in that case to be able to have places where people can speak. When we've done protests for years and years, it's the police who has taken us to the administration to say, you better talk to these people, because this is a situation that's brewing, and it is the political establishment's job to talk and sort it out. Now, an intractable situation cannot be placed on the police's lap, and the police should not be made the agents of a government that wants to fight using the police.
If I can answer your question, I'm sorry to say that you have not understood police well enough. I have seen police 34 years. I have seen things outside police long 32 years. I understand what the police can do, what police can't do. In a situation like this, or any situation for that matter, where the protesters assemble, I mean, you know it very well that we used to be up to India Gate. India Gate, and in a similar, not so big, but similar situation, Mahendra Singh Tikri and his people, they took over India Gate for a very long time. And it was an extraordinary situation again. And probably the use of India Gate as a place of protest was withdrawn after that. If you can recall, Nikhil, probably that would be a good point to start. Similarly, we could not do the same thing. The Delhi police was practically forced to stop all big gatherings within that area. You know, the Lutean city, you call it where Rashtrapati Bhavan is there, Parliament is there, Supreme Court is there. Probably the police could not allow these
people supposed to protest?
Exactly.
So where are people supposed to protest? The right to peaceful assembly, is a democratic right, sir. Irrespective of where you stand on the laws.
I'm not saying that the police has to be a party to it. That's perfectly all right. But today, as you know, in Delhi, Ramlila ground is the nearest to the seat of power, which is a site for protest people can come in ordinary situations. In a situation like this,
they were not given permission for that.
I'm again saying that these decisions are not taken by the police. It's a political decision.
We agree with you. We agree with you on that. We agree with you on that. Okay, quickly, Shubhrastha and Saba. Mr. Kanth, I want to give you the last word. Let them just quickly get in their points. Harish has made it very clear. Either pull back, either repeal the laws or leave it to the states. Saba, quickly, and then Shubhrastha, then Mr. Kanth.
Let's not forget, Barkha, that generally farming has been a state subject. So these laws, could have been challenged illegally on those grounds also. So the reason why the government is being asked, because these are central laws. So Harish is right. Let the BJP regimes implement it, and let the others. There are ways out for the government. The government rammed in these laws. There is, even if the opposition is small, it has every right to demand that it goes to a select committee, that goes to another parliamentary committee. All of that was done with, and now the government gets the Supreme Court involved. Supreme Court says you talk to so-and-so. I mean, the whole thing is absurd. And the fact is, we are looking, that, Barkha, I mean, they have been out there, that, women have arrived, they've been out there, now their sanitation facilities are being taken away, water is being taken away. This is how the government is treating its citizens. And by the way, right now, Mr. Kanth, it will not fit into Ramlila Maidan. It will spread all over. It is so huge, these protests, that I suggest everybody go and, take a look at the scale. I've not seen such large protests ever.
Sir, once again, let me just get Shubhrastha to get the last word. I'll give you the last word on the show. Shubhrastha, if you think about it, I don't have much faith in India's political opposition, but if you think of the two big movements over the last year, Whatever you may think of what happened at Shaheen Bagh, the fact is that the government did put the NRC project into cold storage. The citizenship legislation may have gone through, but the NRC project was put into cold storage. Similarly, the government was ready to blink because of a people-led movement. It may be political now, but it wasn't always party political. It may have been political at heart, but it wasn't party politics, right? What would the government lose if it repealed the laws? What would be the harm if the government repealed the laws just to buy another day of
one correction,
and order and de-escalate the situation?
Right. One correction, there was no draft for any NRC legislation in place. There was a speech by Mr. Amit Shah, which was misconstrued as the government bringing in a legislation. It was never put out in paper on in the well of the house, number one. So the government didn't pull back on NRC. It was never there in a policy conversation.
So that speech was just rhetorical.
No, I'm just saying that, and the NRC continues to be a political issue. It will remain a political. I mean, Assam is going for polls, and I'm sure the question of NRC is going to.
Okay, we'll do a second separate show on NRC, but on the point of what would happen if the government were to pull back. Yeah.
I don't understand why the government should repeal the law when there are groups of farmers from specific geographies who do not want this law in place. And I agree with Saba. I said it last time also. Agriculture is primarily a state subject. It's in the concurrent list, but most of the work is being done by the states. I don't understand why can the farmers not go speak to the Chief Minister of Punjab, speak to the Chief Minister of Haryana, and Western UP, protesters can make a delegation to Yogi Adityanath, sort it out. I don't understand.
Let the government leave it to the states. Let the government leave this to the states. In fact,
the state, Barkha,
it will be clever politics. In fact, forget what's right and wrong. It will be clever politics to transfer this problem back to the states.
Constitutionally speaking, Barkha, I don't think the parliament passed any law which stepped on the shoes of what the state government should have done. The subjects under which farm laws, the subjects which are dealt with in farm laws are pretty much under the ambit of the central government. I don't understand how it is undemocratic. Okay. Beyond rhetoric, I don't understand the protesters.
Okay, here's the point. Whether or not you agree with these protests, this is the situation, Mr. Kanth, the last word on the ground. It is now 2.5 months. You have thousands of people, you have men and women, you have children among them, you have an inflammable situation, you now have simmering violence in sections of it, which the Samyukt Kisan Morcha is disowning, but it's happening. You have the fears of lumpenization. You have the fears of identity politics getting into this. You have Punjab, which sends the maximum number of Jawans to the Indian army. I just want to underline that the Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan slogan is not by accident, right? We cannot afford this, Mr. Kanth. From a national, if you want to be a nationalist, from a national security perspective, we cannot afford this situation. What should the police be doing right now? If you were the police commissioner, sir, what would you be telling the government? Mr. Kanth, don't tell me that we've lost you at this very critical point. Okay, I'm going to make a last attempt to get him back. Quickly, can we get Mr. Kanth back? Harish, do you want to just take that very quickly while we just try and give him that last word? And sorry, you're on mute again, Harish. You need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
No, but already FIRs have been filed against all these people. Now, how will these people call up the PM or the agriculture minister? Because these people actually can be arrested anytime. I mean, so it is illegal for them to even be around, right? I mean, FIRs have been filed even against Medha Patkar, and so how can they engage in a conversation with the government? I mean, whatever, phone call away and all. But these are all people against what UAPA. I don't know. I mean, I don't know about all these laws, but right now it is illegal for them to even to talk to the government.
If you want the government to be disbanded because there are a few people who have a problem with the government, it's not happening. If you don't want to speak to the government because
not disbanded. If the Prime Minister were to make a statement on the floor of the House, what would be lost? Mr. Kanth, you're back. I was saying, speaking through the prism of nationalism, sir, we cannot afford this situation. We just cannot afford the volatility and the inflammability of this situation. If you were serving as police commissioner today, sir, what would you be telling the Home Minister?
Well, I think if I'm forthright and if I'm allowed to speak, I'll say that definitely the government has to find some way out. And the situation, probably the government also might let it go to a particular point. But then we don't want to create Tiananmen Square in Delhi or whatever. I mean, the situation, it becomes so volatile, and the situation, I mean, the assembly is such that the police cannot really deal with that. police can find way out, let's say in smaller situations where they're able to play some tricks, for example. I'm just opening up something which I'll not speak while I was Commissioner of Police or DG Police. For example, that particular day, 26th of January, when things were in a different kind of mode, probably for Delhi police or the police, it was an opportunity. I'm just thinking aloud. It could be an opportunity for them to probably clear those places. If they could not do so, for whatever reasons, I mean, I have no idea why they didn't do at that particular time, with the minimum possible force, with the minimum possible casualty, I would say, let's say, or force being there, they could have done. I'm speaking entirely from police point of view. Because the police has to play certain tactics, certain kind of in these situations and come out of it.
But now, sir, now what?
Then also, one point. Then also 26th January, whatever, when I asked those very senior police officers as to why did they exercise such a restraint or whatever, they said that was a decision taken, and that decision, let me inform you, was not only a police decision. It could be a political decision also, not to apply force. In the present situation also, if that political decision is taken, again political decision I'm saying is taken, that force would not be applied, this kind of barricading, this kind of spikes and those kind of horrifying new instruments being played up, which are being shown. Let's say the police let it just happen. People assemble, they are there, and they again prolong for another 15 days or something like that, and then some solution is found out. Decidedly, the solution has to be found out by all the people concerned. A lot of views are being expressed here. The government will have to take a solution. The police doesn't have a solution to it. Okay, they can wait and watch. They can wait and watch.
Yeah, we agree with. I think the one thing we agree with is, in fact, that Mr. Kanth, that this cannot be a police-driven solution. But I really am struck by that one sentence that you said. Delhi cannot be Tiananmen Square. You cannot have force on these protesters. So there has to be a solution, and the solution cannot come from the police. And I think we have to leave it there. Shubhrastha, Saba, Nikhil, Harish, and Amod Khan, thank you so much. I just want to leave our viewers with these pictures that we're actually seeing, at the borders, 3 borders of our capitals. This is actually what's happening at the protest sites. There is fear that this could be leading up to imminent police action, but Amod Khan, former Delhi Police Commissioner, is saying that would just be horrifying. Maybe the idea is to buy time, is to cordon off these areas so more people can't get there. Certainly farmers are being blocked on the highways. We're going to keep a close eye on this developing story. For now, thank you to our panel and thank you to our audience. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you very much. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.